Yo, what's going on, guys? This is BunnyMuffins. I have the meta snapshot for patch 10.15, and we got a lot of big changes here. The game's changed up a lot during this patch, so let's just get right into it. Just to start off, I recently started playing a lot more seriously in TFT, so last week or last patch, I pretty much played every day, and I was able to get to Grandmaster, so I was pretty happy about that. Hopefully I can push for Grandmaster on my second account and then go for Challenger maybe later in the week, but we'll see after that. So let's get into the tier list. So pretty much, even though I separate stuff out into 4 different tiers, everything is pretty closely tied together. There's like so many viable compositions, and it's like everything's separated by pretty much a hair, so you pretty much have to play whatever you're given or whatever you're really good at personally. One thing to keep in mind is items. Shroud of Stillness wasn't nerfed at all in 10.15. I have no idea why. This item is completely broken. It's probably the best item in the game, so keep building it and keep abusing it pretty much. So let's get into the tier list. Dark Star, Sniper, Mech, Protector, all these are the best. When compared to each other, I don't really know which one is that much stronger than the other. You really just have to play what you get. Like, you can't always go Mech because you can't get Fizz all the time. You can't always go Darkstar because maybe you can't stabilize with a Jhin or Shaco 2 on time. So you really just have to play whatever you're given, but make sure that they are one of these S, A, or B tier comps. So after that, we have Blaster Brawler, Battlecast, and Vanguard Mystic. All these are pretty good. They're not quite as strong as the S tier. For example, Vanguard Mystic has some really weird matchups, so you can't really play Vanguard Mystic in every game. Battlecast, you need to get very specific items for. Blaster Brawler, it's still very good, and it's pretty flexible, but it's not quite as strong as these ones in S tier. Next up, we have Cybernetics. Cybernetic, again, item dependent, and they get countered by certain compositions. Shredder, this composition, it works well if you're below Masters, like super, super well if you're below Masters. But once you get a little higher, Shredder just falls off completely. Like, if you're playing against Challengers, Shredder's just not going to be that great. It's still playable, but you're not going to do too well on average over a big sample size. So I'll get into the reasons later, but yeah, you kind of want to avoid going Shredder if at all possible. Next up, we have 6 Blademasters. I know Master Yi got a huge buff, but I still don't really see too many people playing it, and the ones who do, even if you hit everything, like you'll get first place if you hit everything, like items and champions, but that almost never happens from what I've seen, and if you don't hit certain things, you get 7th or 8th. So just based on how many times this comp goes 7th or 8th, I can't really vouch for it that highly. Even though, like, again, if you hit everything, if you got a great start for it, go ahead and go for the 6 Blademaster composition. But if those 2 specific things don't happen, I wouldn't even try going for this. Just because if you don't hit Master Yi 3, if you don't hit like maybe Shen 3, Yasuo 3, Zed 3, Blademaster Spatula, RFC, Runons, Rageblade for Master Yi, like you're probably getting 8th. So I'm not saying you need all of those, but you need some sort of combination of everything I've listed. And if you don't get those, like, you just get 7th or 8th. And it's not fun having like every 4 games having that happen, because all your good results just get completely erased by that. The only other viable comp is I'd say the Star Guardian composition and maybe Riven Sorc. Riven Sorc's okay. They're just better Victor compositions, such as the Mech build, so we'll get into that later. Rebels, I'd stay away from Rebels. This is probably the only comp here that I've listed here that I would like completely stay away from, because why would you play Rebels when you could play Blaster Brawler, which is just a much stronger variant. So next up, let's go into each composition. I made a little update to pretty much every team composition, so you probably want to stick around for that. Darkstar, so here I changed my mind on Bloodthirster versus Spear of Shojin. Bloodthirster, there are a lot of times where it's better, especially with the Celestial nerf. The lifesteal from the Bloodthirster helps a lot more. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Celestial got nerfed by 5%, so it gives more value to Bloodthirster over Spear of Shojin, because Spear of Shojin's not going to heal you as much anymore. So that's why I like this a lot more now. A Spear of Shojin's still very good, and I'd still probably build it on Shaco if I have the opportunity to, but just one tiny little update. Next up, you'll probably want to not prioritize Warmogs on Jarvan as much, just because Jarvan's a little weaker now. It's still a very good item early game, but if it's late game, don't build a Warmogs on Jarvan. You could just use the belt for other purposes, such as like a Morello, a Zeke's. But like, it's not a bad item, it's just not something I would automatically slam anymore. Next up, Jin's items haven't really changed much. If you are facing a lot of infiltrators, you want Guardian Angel. If not, just go full damage on Jhin, and you could go Karma instead of Xerath, add in Mystic. Xerath's kind of like a luxury. You add him super late game. You only really want to play Xerath when he's 2-star, and yeah, you also need great items on him. There's a lot you need to make Xerath actually work, mainly QSS, AP and attack speed, and then level 2 Xerath. So like you're probably playing Karma in the mid to late game, and probably almost rarely playing Xerath, unless you have like Darkstar Spatula for Fizz, and then you're playing like 6 Darkstar with Karma, Xerath, Mystic, Celestial, and Protectors. Yeah, Karma's also just super strong, but I'm just giving you options here. So if you do end up playing Karma, just take out one of the carries here, either Xerath, Jhin, or Shaco, depending on what items you have. Generally, you want to play Jhin, but he's really hard to hit because everyone goes for Jhin, because Jhin is used in Darkstar and in all the sniper builds. Next up, we have the sniper build. Speaking of the sniper build, a bunch of different versions of this as well. This is my favorite sniper build with the 4 sniper and the chrono. Last patch, it was played by the rank 1 person in North America quite a ton, and this composition wasn't really affected at all by any of the changes. Level 8, you generally want to add in Karma for the Darkstar buff, and then level 9, add in like a Lulu for Mystic and Celestial. Just something to keep in mind for the potential late game builds. But you could pretty much go any random legendaries with this comp. I've seen 4 Vanguards work really well with this too. Yeah, pretty much you just want to get Teemo items, Jhin items, and then maybe some tank items or like a Shroud for your front line, and just go from there. By the way, even though Shroud's not listed in any of these like pictures that I have, it's the best item, but anyone can hold it. That's why I don't put it on a specific champion. But you want Shroud of Stillness just because it completely disrupts enemy teams, and literally anyone can hold it. You just have to move that person around. Next up, we have Mech Pilot. This is one of the comps that made a resurgence in this recent patch. So the reason behind that is Victor got mana changes, so Victor now casts his ultimate a lot more. So that means we also have to keep in mind, Victor got his damage nerfed 2 patches ago, so Morello, much more useful than something like Rabadon's Death Cap, because his damage is lower. So Morello does percent health true damage over time, and just because he doesn't one-shot people anymore with Rabadons, that makes Morello slightly better than Rabadons. You're also not playing too many Sorcerers in this build, so he's like, unless he's 3-star Victor, you're probably not one-shotting anything. After that, you'll want to prioritize mana items, so the best ones are Blue Buff and Spear of Shojin, just because it allows him to cast his ult much quicker and get multiple casts off every game. If you can't get one of these, or if you can't get both of them, add in something like a Luden's, maybe like a Hand of Justice. Just any tier item is really good, tier or rod item. For the mech, you want Quicksilver Sash so you don't get Zephyr'd, because that's your only tank. And then after that, Bramble Vest is really good, Titan's Resolve is really good, maybe like a Dragon Claw if people are playing Janna. But yeah, any generic tank items are going to work on the mech. So any mech item you're building like for the past couple of months, they're going to work still. After that, so this composition's a little weird. It only really requires 4 champions, Annie, Fizz, Rumble, and Victor. After that, maybe add in Demolitionist with Ziggs or Gangplank, maybe add in Mystic, maybe add in Infiltrator. They're all very good. It just depends on what you hit and what you need to counter your lobby. Like, if no one's playing magic damage, you don't need Mystic. If people are running a lot of backline carries, you might want to add in more infiltrators, like maybe something like a Shaco in the mid game to try to one-shot the enemy Teemo or Jhin. It just depends on what you hit, what items you get, and just itemize for that as your other 4 people in the composition. So next up we have Protectors. Protectors still super strong. I added the legendary version here, so because that's the most popular and probably the strongest one. It's a little difficult to play, so if you don't have a lot of experience playing this comp, I wouldn't really recommend going for it, because you need to hit level 9 in order to hit all the legendaries, because this is a super expensive composition. You also have to know how to play whatever legendaries you're dealt, because you can't always get 4 specific legendaries or 5 specific legendaries. But pretty much you play Protectors in the early to mid game. You play something like an Ashe carry as an item holder for Janna and Xerath, because Ashe makes great use of Spear of Shojin, Runon's Hurricane, Rage Blade, maybe like double Shojin even. And then later you transfer maybe like a Syndra as an item holder for Urgot, because Syndra can hold blue buff really well. And then later, once you get the legendaries, you go ahead and sell off your mid-game carries, throw them all in the legendary units, and just pretty much outscale everyone. This is probably one of the strongest late-game compositions, just because, I mean, you're running all the legendary units, so it kind of has to be the strongest, right? But yeah, it's a pretty difficult composition to play. I know like difficulty is low here, but that's because there are a lot of different versions of protectors you can go, but the best one, it is pretty difficult, so I just watch out for that. But you can play protectors with sorcerers, you can play protectors with snipers, protectors with infiltrators, pretty much anything you get your hands on and whatever items you're dealt. So next up we have Blaster Brawler. Jinx, I think she's like super underrated. She's just overall like a very good unit, and she got a slight buff in the recent patch. It doesn't really do that much, or doesn't change that much about her, but she's just always been really solid, and if no one else is going for her, go ahead and go for Blaster Brawler. Brawlers are super easy to hit for 4 Brawlers, super strong mid game, and then as long as you have decent Jinx items, you're going to be doing well every game. Your late game's going to be Aurelion Soul, so go ahead and get items on him, and then for the other 2 units, since you run 4 Brawlers and 2 Blasters, it can be like an extra Rebel unit, and like a random legendary unit. Or you could do like 2 infiltrators like Zed and Fizz or Echo. If you don't even want to add any rebels, you could just go ahead and add Mystic if there's a lot of ability power in your lobby or a lot of Jannas. Alright, and then for Jinx items, like Giant Slayer's really good, Last Whisper IE's really good, Red Buff's really good, RFC's really good, Runon's is okay. There are a lot of different items. I list them all out here. Probably the best one might be Giant Slayer. That's why I listed it first out there. There's a lot of Vanguards. You might want a Last Whisper. It really just depends on your lobby. There's no really like set best items on Jhin because it just depends on who you're facing. But since Mech is very popular right now, I highly recommend going for Giant Slayer just because you get the Giant Slayer bonus to pretty much take down the mechs as fast as possible. Next up, we have the Battlecast build. So I've seen a ton of players. If you look at any profile of people who are climbing, like, for example, someone who was maybe 500 LP before and maybe 1,000 LP since the patch hit, all those players are playing Battlecast. And the reason behind that is because none of the top players are playing Battlecast. So this composition is like super open and pretty much easy to hit for any player who's just really good at forcing them. But yeah, a lot of Battlecast one tricks are pretty much climbing super quickly right now. The build's pretty easy. Like, you just need to hit, you don't need to go for like the 3-star Battlecast version. A lot of people are doing that, but I think the best way to play Battlecast is just going to level 8, have level 2s of everything, and pretty much just go from there because you want to try to hit Urgot in your late game. All you really need in the early to mid game is like a red buff or like a static shiv on Kog'Maw. And if you have red buff, add in like a Runons. If you have Battlecast spat, throw it on like Xerath or Ezreal. Ezreal in the mid game is really good if you get like 2 red buffs. That's like super, super strong. Yeah, Xerath's also great, obviously, too. After that, like maybe like a Morello Namicon on Victor's good. Mana items on Victor, because Victor's still like a very good carry. But yeah, you just play the comp, you just destroy everyone in the mid game. Late game, this comp does fall off, so just be careful about that. Next up, we have Vanguard Mystic. This comp is really weird. There's like 6 Vanguard and 4 Vanguard, 4 Mystic. Both are very good. You just have to play whatever is good against your lobby. So this comp's really hard to play because you have to scout a lot and kind of guess who you're going to fight. And then switch out your team accordingly. For example, if your next matchups are like 2 magic damage dealers and 1 physical damage dealer, you might want to sub out 2 of the Vanguards to play 4 Mystic instead. So it's like this comp is a lot of work, and it's hard to win with this comp, but when executed properly, like this composition pretty much counters a lot of other teams. So you end up dealing maybe like 20 damage per turn in each of your wins, which shortens the game time and prevents people from hitting their late game units. Super strong build. I really love this. The only important items are the blue buff and Morello Namicon on Cassiopeia. Pretty much every other item is optional. Like, you don't need specific Jace items. Ionic Spark and GA are very nice, but you don't really need them. You really only need blue buff and Morello Namicon on Cassio. Level 9, you could either pivot into a bunch of legendary units and go ahead and sell Cassio, or you can add in something like a Thresh to pull in a bunch of Urgots. That's pretty much up to you, whatever you hit and however much gold you have in the late game. Next up, we have Cybernetics. Cybernetics, super good if you're really good at Cybernetics, but not a lot of people play Cybernetics that often. If you get a great start for it, for example, like a IE Last Whisper start, go ahead and play this build. No reason not to, because if you hit perfect items, you're going to do really well. But I really suggest not playing Cybernetics unless you really know what you're doing, because everyone else who is good at Cybernetics is just going to play much better than you. You might as well just play some of the S tier compositions and get higher average placements with that. At the same time, that doesn't mean Cybernetics are bad. Like, they're a good comp, but you just have to be good at it because it's not as rewarding as other compositions. Next up, we have Shredder. Shredder's kind of in the same boat as Cybernetics. If you're not good at Shredder, don't bother playing Shredder because, again, you can just play much better compositions. You really only need Xayah items. Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, then, like, you could go QSS. Some people like Giant Slayer, some people like Deathblade, or like another random third offensive item. It doesn't really matter. You just need Infinity Edge and Last Whisper, and literally the rest of the items don't really matter too much. But I guess since there's a lot of mech being played, you really do want the Giant Slayer right now, but it's hard to get 3 very specific items. So just really prioritize Infinity Edge and Last Whisper. The best way to play this is to slow roll and hit Xayah 3 during level 5, and then after that pretty much just power level to level 8, put in 6 Blademaster, have the 2 Protectors, have Celestial, and pretty much just try to hope for the best from there. It's really hard to win with this composition, but it's pretty easy to get like top 4 or top 3 with it. And the reason behind not being able to win a lot of games is because you get outscaled by pretty much every composition. Jhin 2 is going to beat a Xayah 3. Xerath 2 is going to beat a Xayah 3. Pretty much like any 2-star legendary is going to beat a Xayah 3 in terms of damage output. So that's why this comp loses out in the late game, which means you really have to take advantage of the early game power spikes and mid game power spikes that you get from Xayah 3 and really try to punish people from there. Next up, we have the 6 Blademaster comp. Best items on Mastery is Rapid Fire Cannon and Runon's. Third item, it's either like a second Runon's or a Rage Blade. I'm not really too sure which one is better, but they're both super, super good. Zed, if you get the Blademaster Spatula, that's like a huge upgrade because that allows you to save a level and get 6 Blademasters that much earlier. After that, like Shen 3, Zed 3, Yasuo 3, they're all very, very good, but like, of course you want Master Yi 3 the most, so try to roll for that. You just pretty much rush level 7 and just slow roll at level 7 and then find a time to all in for the Master Yi later. And you pretty much all in when you're like 2 off from finishing Yi, or if you're like low health and you pretty much have to all in, because if you don't get Yi 3, this comp is pretty rough to play. Sometimes Zed can carry, but if he doesn't have Blademaster Spatula, it's pretty hard to. Star Guardian Sorcs, this comp's really popular in Korea. Not so much in North America and Europe, but you pretty much just go Syndra carry, blue buff, hat, nothing else really matters. Maybe some tank items on Nico, and then late game add in a Janna. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's okay. Like I haven't seen people have too much success with it. That's why it's in C tier, but if you're really good at the comp, I'm sure you can make something happen with it. So next up, we have Sorc and Riven and GP. Riven version's probably better right now, but if you get like an early GP2 for some reason, like just go ahead and play that because you could one-shot a lot of teams with like GA double hat or GA hat Ionic. But after that, Victor is your secondary carry. You want like mana items, AP items on him, doesn't really matter. You just want him, as long as Victor casts twice a fight, you'll probably win those fights. And then in the super late game, you add things like Xerath and Janna later on. But this comp, for some reason, it just isn't as powerful as everything else. Like Riven, they're just better tanks than Riven right now, and she doesn't completely solo enemy teams as she did before for some reason. I'm not really too sure on the reason why, but just how the games are playing out, she's not 1v9ing anymore. So that's why this comp isn't that great anymore, but it's still very good if you're able to hit Riven 2, Victor 2 pretty easily. But if you're not hitting them easily, I'd probably try to pivot into something else. Rebels, we already went over this. Don't go Rebels. Just go for Blaster Brawler instead if you want to play Jinx. That's really about it from there. Items tier is the most important because blue is so good. Blue buff, the one that gives 2 tiers and gives 20 mana after each cast. So many champions are using that right now, and it's like super critical on like Teemo and Victor. Sword's really good because it builds like all the good damage items. It builds Guardian Angel, just very solid overall. Glove is super good because it builds Shroud of Stillness, it builds Last Whisper, it builds Infinity Edge, pretty much just a lot of great items. Chain Vest, good for GA, Bramble Vest, Shroud of Stillness, Red Buff if you're going Blaster. You pretty much just don't want Negatron, and Rod's not that great either. Rod's okay. Like, Rod can build stuff like Ionic, Hat, Ludens, like Rage Blade, which are critical in some combinations, but or in some compositions, but it's not like the best item. So I try to avoid these two back here. Lastly, on the item quadrant, Shroud of Stillness, that's really all the only item you need for every team. Apart from that, blue buff super good on a lot of champions, like GA is still good. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just like there are too many items to list off here, but yeah, pretty much everything's viable. If we look at the top again, like everything's super close together. Just play whatever you're dealt and just try to win from there. I actually don't like these kind of metas where like everything's viable. Reason being is because if people are playing like 7 different compositions and like you are the only one who needs to decide what their comp is, you're like always going to be contested. It's a little annoying. That's why I like 3 meta compositions or like 4 meta compositions, because like I'm used to being contested, so I don't really care that much if like someone's griefing me or playing a comp with me. But it's not like detrimental if you're sharing a comp with someone else. It's just like I just hate when like too many comps are viable, because if I'm the only guy who's contested, I'm gonna have a disadvantage. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this patch. Again, hopefully like I can get to Grandmaster on my second account and then try to push for Challenger next week. But we'll see what happens. It'll probably be on my stream at twitch.tv/BunnyMuffinsLOL. I'll stream Saturday and Sunday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. US Eastern Time. But yeah, hopefully you guys are gonna climb on this patch. Hopefully I will too, and we'll just go from there. If you guys are new, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the like if you enjoyed this video, if I helped you gain any sort of LP. And if you want to get even more TFT action, go ahead and join my Discord, BunnyMuffins.lol/Discord. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. All those links are in the description below, so be sure to check that out. But yeah, good luck. I'll see you guys next time. Oh yeah, also I have a new episode of Team Up coming this weekend, so definitely look out for that. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.